Hi, Christy.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it The Why and the Buy.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Why and the Buy podcast. I am Jeff Bajorek, here as always with the lovely Christie Walters. Christie, how are you today?
I am doing fabulous, Jeff. How are you today?
Oh, it's another great day to be alive. I love doing this, and I love doing what I do, and I know that not everybody can share that same enthusiasm, and I wish everybody could, and I really believe that everybody can find a way to do that if they're willing to work hard enough, but I'll get off that soapbox for a second and ask you, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about eliminating the noise. How do you put sales distractions on mute and just distractions in general in life? And, I was kind of chuckling earlier. I went out to walk the dog right before you and I got on this recording today, and it is 68 degrees and sunny with no breeze outside. And I really struggled coming back in. In fact, I really struggled not packing the golf clubs up and going to the course this afternoon. So,
listen, if you ever want to postpone an episode because you have a day that you just need to go play 9 holes, we call those emergency nines for a reason.
Yes,
you go right ahead.
Absolutely.
I will hand you or print you or whatever it takes to give you a get out of jail free card as far as that is concerned.
We're lucky enough to have a couple of those kinds of days here coming up in the next few days. So I'll have some time to get out on the course maybe tomorrow morning.
Well, and we're going to talk about eliminating the noise today. Sometimes the noise is good. Sometimes the noise is a welcome distraction. Sometimes it's just a good thing to give yourself a break. Give yourself a break about giving yourself that break. Play hooky. I love the fact that at least during the Major League Baseball season, Thursday afternoons tend to be getaway days for the teams. And so if every once in a while you get a Thursday 1 p.m. afternoon start and it's just 74 degrees and sunny and no one's there, and you go, you can walk right up to the box office, get yourself a ticket and go just take a break for a while. I don't think that is a bad thing, but that is not the noise we're talking about eliminating today, Christy.
Yeah, not really. I think it's interesting. You and I have had a lot of conversations, and we'll have to do a podcast episode on this too, about allowing yourself giving yourself a break about taking a break, right? So those overachievers, or as you like to say, hyperachievers.
Hyperachievers, yes.
I'll let you describe that. But oftentimes we are always so hard on ourselves anytime we go to take a break. It's like we feel like we're missing something.
It's a fine line to keep that balance. And I heard this, actually, I think it was Scott Van Pelt on the radio years ago, said something to the extent of, it's very difficult to unplug from the juice that makes you who you are. And I think part of giving yourself that break is accepting who you are and everything that comes along with that. Right. I don't know if I'm even the person to talk about that. I can talk about being a hyperachiever. I don't know that I can necessarily talk about giving myself a break for that, but I am who I am, and I'm comfortable with that. And I know there's a lot of people out there.
We're all a work in progress.
Absolutely, and we just kind of keep going with that. But there is a lot out there in terms of distractions. We are constantly being asked to go away or be pulled away from those things that we know are most important to us. It's hitting that snooze alarm in the morning, or the snooze on the alarm in the morning. It's, I know I've got to get up and do this, but something wants me to stay. Maybe it's your partner is just grabbing you by the back of your pajamas and keeping you in bed, or maybe it's just the fact that you didn't get to bed early enough. And a lot of times you didn't get to bed early enough because you're doing too many things that you thought were important that you could have gotten done earlier in the day, except so many other things were trying to distract you and grab your attention. And we are in an attention-starved environment, in that the attention spans continue to get shorter and shorter and shorter, and there are more and more things demanding that same attention. And how do you filter out, Christy, what you should be doing from all of the things that you could be doing?
And that's a loaded question. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that distractions are sneaky oftentimes. It's fairly easy for us to identify the I want to go golf 9 holes this afternoon distraction, right, from the email that just popped up in my inbox while I'm trying to write an article for a partner of mine, or the water cooler conversation with the office complainer, right? So that you're getting sucked into their world of negativity. And thoughts are distractions too, right? So if you don't spend a lot of time really focusing your attention on the types of things that are going that you're feeding your mind with, the types of things that you're engaging on a regular basis, is that actually moving you towards your goal, or are you just treading water? And I think a lot of times we're a busy society. In fact, one of the things I wrote in the production notes was the little quote from the white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. And it's like, I'm late for a very important date. Hello, goodbye. I'm late. I'm so late. We're busy.
Yep.
And yet we're not getting anything done. So we're not focusing our attention on the thing that's going to really drive our goals and dreams to fruition, right?
Yeah. How do you feel about little red circles with numbers in them?
Little red circles with numbers on a calendar, you mean?
No, I mean on my phone. When I've got 3 voicemails and 2 text messages and 17 emails, and the App Store says I have 47 updates, and my expense tracker app says you've got all these expenses you need to categorize, and podcast downloads, and everything is a push alert. Now, I deleted Facebook from my phone because the best way to access Facebook from your iPhone is through the Facebook app. I appreciate that. I understand that. But I don't want Facebook on my phone. My battery life is better, for one. I will say that for sure. I don't charge every day. I don't have to. And there was a difference that was made after I dropped Facebook from my phone. But everybody wants to send you a push alert. Twitter wants to push alerts. LinkedIn, would you like us to alert you? Your email, it is WhatsApp, it is Snapchat if you want that. It is everything out there. And so what you've got, we create this for ourselves because we feel like we're going to miss something if we don't, but everything gives us a push notification. And if it's on your iPhone, that's a little red dot. It's a little red circle with a number in it. And it's been a while since I've had an Android phone, but I believe those were little red circles as well. So everybody out there, with apologies to you Windows phone users, I think the 4 of you have a completely different notification, but we do this to ourselves. And when we stop and think about it, when we take a step back, why do we do that? When did email become an urgent thing? And what's interesting, too, is you contrast that with a lot of salespeople who will utilize social media, utilize text messaging, utilize emailing because of the convenience of it. Oh, my prospect can get this when they do have the convenience or the spot in their schedule to get it, and they can reply at their convenience. It also makes it very, very easy to ignore. We'll touch on that in another episode, but it's... what we know we need to do is reach that person.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, here's the interesting thing about, the little red circles with the numbers in them, right? That's all in our control. And that's probably the message that a lot of people should take home when we talk about distractions and really eliminating the noise in your system. A lot of this is under your control. If you are distracted by that, and some people aren't, some people don't care. The numbers could be, 5,000 and they would be fine with that. That would drive me crazy because I would always think I had something undone.
Yes.
But if it bothers you, if it distracts you, you have to turn it off. And a lot of that is in our control, whether it's in our phone or it's the fact that while you're trying to write that proposal, you've got your email inbox open, and every time an email comes in, you're dropping off that you're moving from the proposal to looking at that email because something might need your immediate attention. Rarely does an email need your immediate attention.
Right.
You can easily just shut that application down and work on one. One of the techniques I loved the most, and it worked really well for me because I'm the classic ADD salesperson, right?
Sure. Sure.
is the Pomodoro technique. And if you knew the Pomodoro little tomato egg timers or timers, kitchen timers that they used to make, that's the Pomodoro tomato, right?
Okay.
So it's basically you set it for 25 minutes and you worked on one task for 25 minutes. And when that ding was up, you got up from that task, you walked around, you walked the dog, you did another task, you did something else, but you completely removed yourself from that experience. And I did an experiment for about a month time and tried to focus on just using that technique to manage my day. And I was extremely productive, especially for producing project-based tasks like proposals and articles, things like that. So I love that element, but ultimately it meant that I had to shut all other distractions off for that 25 minutes.
Yes. And here's the thing. And it took me a minute or, half an hour to get to my point earlier. But I mean, we send emails sometimes as opposed to calling our prospects because of their convenience. Meanwhile, we don't allow ourselves the convenience of setting a Pomodoro tomato timer, right? And here's the thing. And I think many people in sales have been burned by this before, where you miss an email by 5 minutes and that's an opportunity, right? And I think that we all feel too that if we can respond to that email fast enough that we can get them while they're still in front of their computer, and maybe that ding catches them before they leave their desk, and we can have a real-time text conversation essentially, because we knew where they were for the second, right when they pressed send on that email. But you're exactly right. When we really think about it, how many of the requests for our time and of the distractions that we get, how many of the emails, how many of the text messages, how many of the Facebook messages, for crying out loud, or tweets really need to be responded to within 20 minutes, 25 minutes?
Yeah. Right.
90 minutes, dare I say an hour and a half. And I don't think it is fair to expect anybody, because I can't expect it of myself, to be totally focused on one thing, especially something that's very mentally intensive, like working on a project or a proposal. How can you, to spend more than 90 minutes on that without at least sitting back in your chair, getting up, grabbing something to drink, that's tough to do. But schedule that. And I think part of the permission of giving yourself or ridding yourself of some of those distractions is, look, I know that there's nothing that needs to be responded to within the next 60 minutes. So I'm not going to respond to anything for 60 minutes, but I know for those next 60 minutes that I can focus on this project that I know needs to be done. And we spoke about this on a podcast many episodes ago, Christie, about the 3 to 5 things that you need to get done at the beginning of every day. And that starts with planning the night before. I would say it starts with planning the week before. And what are the 3 main things I need to get done next week? What days am I going to do them? And am I dedicating the time on my calendar to make sure they get done? The next most important thing is making sure that you honor those boundaries around that time that you set. But there are just so many of these things that, for whatever reason, even though we can realistically sit down in the therapist's chair, so to speak, and say, yeah, I know that what I'm doing is not congruent with what I'm saying, for whatever reason, there's still this there's just this notion that we can't let go. And I don't know where that comes from.
Well, I think for a lot of us, some of it stems from the imposter syndrome, right? For the over or hyperachievers of the world, right? That we believe that somewhere down the line, we're going to be found out for not being as fabulous as we actually are. And we are all fabulous, by the way. We are our own worst critics. And I think that as a society, we've just exhausted ourselves, right? We've taken away a lot of the structure in our work environments, which is great. I think it's wonderful for what people like you and I do on a daily basis. It's wonderful for how we connect with our clients. It's wonderful for people who have children that they're raising and still managing to work a very aggressive and a career path. But at the end of the day, we've taken a lot of the structure away from our workday. We don't show up at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning and then clock out at 5. We kind of start when we wake up at 5 or 6 and we check our email and we respond to a couple of things, and then we shower and then we respond to a couple of other things, and then we commute and we're on the phone with clients, and then at the end of the day you're coming home late after dinner, cut the kids into bed and you're back at it again. So we've stopped establishing boundaries anywhere in our life. And so to change that feels like we're losing something along the way.
I blame the millennials.
I thought the millennials were going to save us, Jeff. You said that was going to be the case.
I think they will. And I think that, and I really do believe that. And I still do blame them, right? I mean, that was the thing. And I talk about this with my parents all the time, and they've come a long way toward understanding at least where I'm coming from when I don't start at 7 and end at 3:30 and then put my work down. I don't set my briefcase down when I walk into the door and I'm just good until I pick it up the next day, right? But I think that we have to realize that just because it feels like we're busy for 17 hours a day doesn't mean that we got 17 hours worth of work done. And this is one of the things that I talk about and speak about it in front of rooms and in one-on-one discussions is, you get 24 hours in a day. You get the same 24 hours that anybody else walking this planet gets. We all make choices too. So when you look back on the previous 24 hours, how'd you do? I mean, really, and this takes a certain depth of focus and really a really good hard look at yourself and your actions and your choices to say, did I really spend 2.5 hours scrolling through my social media feeds because I just got sucked into cat videos and baby pictures, right? And it's nothing against cat videos and baby pictures, but is that more important than putting together that proposal? Is that more important than reading a book that's going to make you better? Is that more important than taking a walk or going to the gym? For crying out loud, scroll while you're walking on a treadmill or, whatever it is, because there are a lot of people out there who don't hit that New Year's resolution weight loss goal because they spent too much time looking at cat videos and baby pictures, right? Like if we really want to take a look at this, and that's what you and I do better than a lot of other people do, is stop, ask the question, think about what are you really doing with your time and why can't you do something different with it? And why can't you do something different that's still going to accomplish the same goal or accomplish both of those goals if you can, and the creativity that comes along with finding those solutions. But I think it's important to take responsibility for the choices that we make. And sometimes that responsibility means going into your settings menu and shutting off push notifications.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other side to that is back to my comment about how distractions are very sneaky.
Yes.
And oftentimes, as much as I know cat videos are a distraction for a lot of people, it's not even that. It's scrolling through the feed of your industry on Twitter and responding to those items. As speakers and coaches, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about how much is enough and how much is too much when it comes to social media. It can seem as though it's very productive time spent, but when you look at the return on that investment, it ends up not being so at all. And I think a lot of people in our industry really fall victim to that.
No question. And this has come up quite a bit lately. I've written about it. I've read about it. There's so much vitriol out there when it comes to the concept of social selling versus picking up the phone, and what is the balance between a good use of social media and all the variety of information that is out there, and the ability to utilize that information. And where do you draw the line between what's productive and what is just, oh, no, I'm on Twitter. It's totally okay to be on Twitter now that I'm at work because I'm social selling, right? It just becomes a very convenient crutch. And it's a gray area. There is no black and white. There is no clear line in the sand. And sometimes it's just procrastination disguised as productivity.
That's exactly right. Productive procrastination is a big issue for me sometimes.
Well, and you can look back, and I do some work with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, and you look at the quadrants or the the time management matrix, and there's urgency and there's importance. And, most quadrant 2 is what is not urgent but is important. And a lot of people will say that continuing education and reading books and taking time to think and meditate, that's very, very productive. Those are quadrant 2 types of activities, and those are things that we should do more of. And then there are other people who will say, well, watching television is a time waster. There's nothing redeeming about that. So that's a quadrant 4 activity. It is not urgent and not important. We should avoid those at all costs. Now, I also use a personal example that when I get up in the morning on the weekends, and my kids get up too, and they want to jump on the couch and sit next to me and turn the TV on, that's quality time with my kids. And maybe the TV is not doing anything for me. Maybe it's not doing anything for them either, but it's something that's on, and maybe that's just the reason that we get to spend those 10 minutes together in silence. That is absolutely a quadrant 2 activity. And I know a lot of people who will pick up a book or scroll Twitter or do some other sort of continuing education focused kind of workshop thing. Oh, wait, no, I'm making myself better. Yeah, but you don't need to do that right now because you've got a list of things that need to get done right away. You're finding something that looks productive and using it as a time waster.
Right.
It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It may look like something that is productive and worth doing, but at the end of the day, it's really just something that you're using to put off that which you know is more important. Ultimately, that is the mirror test. When you look in the mirror at the end of the day, what were the choices you made, and were they the most productive that you could use? And sometimes that means, and this is what I've had to do, at a certain time, I'm done. I have to be done, which means I need to get it done before then, right? I have 6 days during the week when I'm allowed to get any work done, because when I had the 7th, all of a sudden it was, I can get that done Sunday morning. No, that's fine. And then all of a sudden, there's just another couple of hours of things that I need to do on Sunday. Well, I didn't need to do it. I could have done it on Thursday afternoon, but I didn't because I knew I had Sunday to go to. And sometimes those boundaries, to give yourself the ability to check out, ability to do the stuff that is not work related.
Well, and do the stuff that you ultimately value. So it's interesting. And as you know, I belong to a church here in Atlanta called North Point Community Church, which is led by Andy Stanley, who is a fabulous speaker and writer. And I just love every time I get an opportunity to listen to Andy. But he just finished up a series called What You Really Want. And one of the statements that he makes in that series is that what you immediately want is not in line with what you ultimately value. And so it speaks to that concept. And we talk about goal setting, and we talk about a lot of things on our kind of our toolkit for successful salespeople. But if you can establish in your life, what is it that you ultimately value and want for your life, not just for this year, not for today, not for tomorrow? What is it that's going to, is it you want people to talk a certain way about you when you're no longer here, right? Or is it that you want to leave a mark and make a difference in a particular area that's a passion for you, if it's homelessness or if it's poverty or if it's civil rights. I mean, those are the things that are of importance to you. That's part of what you ultimately value. If it's creating a family of, generations of love and, being able to be surrounded by those individuals at the most important times of your life. When you have that picture in your head, all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to make those short-term decisions, because distractions are just that. They are short-term. And if you can decide, you can ask yourself a quick question and say, okay, does this distraction help me ultimately get to what I ultimately value for my life? And that's okay if it means that what I ultimately value is peace and balance. And so going and playing 9 holes of golf gives me that peace and balance. And oh, by the way, in doing so, that means that I will give an extra hour or 2 this afternoon when I come back to finishing up the work pieces. Then that's an okay approach as well. So, it's interesting. You really kind of have to have in your head what that ultimate goal is to know whether or not you can judge the distraction the appropriate way. Now, there are some, in my opinion, that will always be negative distractions, right? The naysayers and the idiots in your life that are just not adding value whatsoever. Don't give your time to people who don't deserve it.
Right.
And certainly to people who drag you down. So
right.
that's a given, right? So,
it's a given to a point, right? It sounds like a given when you say it like that, Christy.
Yeah.
What about the person at the cubicle next to you? If you're in a cubicle, if you're in an inside sales organization, if you're in a boiler room, so to speak, what about the other people on your team? What about the people that it's really just a lot of times easier to put up with them than it is to tell them to go fly a kite, right? This is for the team. We can't have these bad relations at work. And certainly we have to dig a little deeper to find out what the real motive is there. What is really most important, because it's not all going to be sunshine and roses. But there are definitely people that are in your life right now and mine that really don't need to be there quite as often as we let them. And anybody listening right now knows, I guarantee you, anybody listening right now,
everybody's got one.
A name just popped into your head and you tried to shove it back in there, right? You try to push it back down and ignore that, right? But there's someone in there that you're giving way more of your time and energy to that does not deserve it. And you're giving them way more time and energy than they deserve. And it's stopping you from doing something else that would benefit you. And there's a certain amount of productive selfishness that is necessary when it comes to
there's a certain amount of insulation too. I think that you have to put around yourself. I think that you're right. You can't steer clear of everyone that's negative. And honestly, you have to be careful that you don't try and create an environment of only people who think like you do, because that's dangerous as well, right?
Echo chambers are not good. No,
not at all. In fact, it becomes a pretty dangerous way to go through life if that's the approach that you take. So you want to embrace those with other opinions, and just because they are expressed in a negative way doesn't necessarily mean that individual is a naysayer. The naysayer though, right? And you do know that there are times when you can walk away from the naysayer and just give yourself space and not rise to the occasion. I mean, I think insulating yourself to say, look, yes, they're negative. They're having a challenging time. They are going to have to own your own stuff. You can't be responsible for making everyone happy.
Yep.
And you also are not responsible for absorbing that into your own life. So
I agree.
Just find that balance, I think.
Well, let me take that and parlay it into one of the other things that you mentioned here in our pre-production notes, but you say you need to flip the script in your head.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So flipping the script in your head, and you and I've done this before, we just might not have called it that. It's that conversation of, oh my gosh, I need to call this prospect, but what do I do if they don't say no, if they say no? What if they don't buy? What if that contract doesn't close? What if, right? And instead of saying, what do I do if the customer says no, you flip the script and you say, what do I do if the customer says yes? And what does that make possible?
What do I do when the customer says yes?
Right.
Yeah. No, but I love that. What does this make possible?
What does this make possible?
I love that.
And we stole this, or I stole this from our buddy, Don, the Idea Guy, who those of you who are listening, a few weeks back, heard Don, the Idea Guy on our podcast. And he quoted his friend, Scott Ginsberg, who we hope to have here on the podcast at some point as well. But what does this make possible? This is what has happened, and it's neither positive nor negative, a yes or a no. It just is. What does that make possible?
I think that is a vital question in sales, and I'm going to take it a step past Scott and Don, but think about what it makes possible to get you to pick up that phone, to get you to do that thing that you don't want to do right now, but you need to do. But let's also take that concept and think about your prospects. What does working with you make possible for them?
Right.
And frame all of your pitches, your marketing, your phrasing, your scripting, even if you want to go down that road, and frame it in terms of what does this make possible for you? And I think that is where most salespeople miss. So I'm not going to stay on this soapbox for long, but the what does this make possible question is way more profound than what most people will even give it credit for. And when it comes to selling, it's the difference between the winners and losers more times than not.
Yeah.
But selling yourself on why you need to do that thing, flipping that script. It's you're exactly right. And as usual, Christie, hit the nail right on the head.
That actually brings us pretty close to the end of our podcast. I have a couple of key points I did want to make a note of that we did have in our production notes. And that's just kind of when you're really struggling with distractions. What do? What's kind of the short list of things to take a look at to try and clear the air a bit? We talked about time wasters and naysayers. As much as you can, move them out of your daily life. Put technology in its place. Make sure that you don't allow the technology to control you. You're meant to control that technology, and it's meant to be a tool and not a way of life. Flipping the script in your head. Obviously, we just talked about that in depth. And then finally, feeding your mind. Zig Ziglar talked a lot about the fact that the best way to get rid of a bad habit is to replace it with a good habit. So take that thing that you're doing, you really want to stop doing, and replace it with something else. Instead of spending that 45 minutes on Facebook at 11:30 in the morning, or maybe on your lunch break, bring a book and feed your mind. Do something to occupy that time and really honor what you're trying to do.
Well, I think at the earliest opportunity, most often first thing in the morning, we give up our best opportunity to be proactive about something, and we look for an opportunity to react to something. And I think fundamentally that's not the greatest way to start your day. So if your first item of business every morning is to feed your mind, and I love that phrase as well, because it's not the same as put something in your face. It is feed your mind, nourish your brain. Think about it that way, and you'll have a different outlook on it. It's really, really good stuff. And I just don't think that we think about why we do the things we do often enough. And I want to be very, very clear. This is not something that you can just flip a switch on and then all of a sudden you're distraction free.
Yeah.
It's really easy for us to talk about the things that we should do. It's really easy for us to advise other people on how to do things. But as real human beings, these are things that we all struggle with from time to time. I've got varying levels of mastery of all the things that I talk about. And I know that you do too, and really anybody else does. And we're really, really good at some things, and that's why we're able to get up here and tell other people about some of the strategies that we've employed to do that. But the thing that I have really come to realize is that it's all right to acknowledge that you're not perfect at something. It's all right and actually welcome to acknowledge that these are processes that we all have to work on. And I think when we realize that the process is the point and that it's all part of the journey, it becomes easier to wrestle, if that's the word, with concepts like this. Listen, for whatever reason, those little red circles with numbers in them are like a drug to some people, and they need them. They need to feel like they're being informed. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you allow yourself some of that, right? I love to scroll. When it comes to social media, I love to scroll. Obviously, I give myself some opportunities to scroll, but I stopped scrolling on Facebook and spent more time scrolling on LinkedIn, right? And I get my scroll fix on my phone with the ESPN app or something like that gives me that kind of feeling. That there's nothing wrong with having to scroll if that's your thing, but what are you scrolling through, right? I think the question is there and is fair to be asked. Is that the most productive way for you to indulge those things? But this is not something that's going to happen overnight. You're going to have to listen to this podcast again, everybody.
I'm going to go back and listen to it as soon as you're finished mixing it. All right, Jeff. So I think we're running a little bit over now. So I think that's probably a great way to end this particular episode of The Why and the Buy. And next week, we are going to have Alejandro Tornado. And he is just like his last name suggests. He is like a tornado at times. He is just an incredible energy. He speaks a lot. He's a John Maxwell certified instructor and speaker. I've crossed paths with Alejandro several times over the last year, and I just love his energy. We're going to talk a lot about servant leadership on the next podcast. It's one that's really close to my heart, so I'm excited about the discussion.
To serve is to rule, as they say, and servant leadership is a very, very vital topic. That's selling.
Yeah.
The people who believe that selling is about taking have it backward. So having Alejandro on like a tornado through the Midwest.
Like a tornado. He's going to love that I actually portrayed him that way. But yes.
The energy coming through the airwaves.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You'll love him.
Fantastic. I can't wait. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week, Christy. I'm looking forward to all of you guys hearing me next week. Is that too much?
You even had like a little Elvis swagger going on when you said that.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. Join us again next week. Give us a rating if you like what we're talking about. Christy and I love doing this, and quite frankly, we're going to do it whether you listen or not. But if you do listen to it, this is the 13th episode. If you've caught us for more than 3, I think you dig us just a little bit. Please give us a review. Write us up. Give us 4 stars. Give us 5 stars is better than 4, but feel free to be honest. We do this because we love it and we know we're helping people. And I also know that when you know your whys, your hows and your whats get way better. So keep listening. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week. Daniel's born in a crib with some skin and a mother. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Why and the Buy podcast. If you liked us, subscribe. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and really anywhere else you can get a podcast. And if you really liked us, then give us a 5-star review. We like those, and we like you too. Here at the Why and the Buy podcast, we've got our own house band. Christy and I think they're absolutely perfect for what we're trying to do with this podcast, and we hope you think so too. If you like them as much as we do, then you should check them out. They're called Haskins, and they're based in southeastern Michigan. You can find their music and more at haskinsmusic.com. Go check them out.